Hey Nick, how are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad. And you?
Not too bad at all, thank you. It looks like our countdown has ended a little bit early because Joel has popped out, and that means we are live and ready to take on the LinkedIn audience as well as the Facebook and YouTube. So it's going to be an interesting session because I think this is the first proper live interview I've done with you. Is that correct?
I think so, yes, as far as I'm aware of.
So have you done any other live interviews on LinkedIn before?
No.
Okay. So this is a first for you as well. Excellent.
Yes,
Well, it should be.
I'm trying to remember the last online interview. I don't actually. I've done some presentations and webinars, but not an interview.
Excellent stuff. Well, today's going to be an interesting one for many people because, Nick, you've come from such a wide background of knowledge, and you come from an investor background, but not only an investor, you've done property, you've been involved in the music industry and licensing, and there's almost nothing you haven't done. Or if it's a business that had a pulse, you've been involved. So for those of you who are following on LinkedIn, if you're on there, drop in a message. Let us know where you are joining us from. And if you've got any questions for Nick today as well, because Nick's going to be going into quite a few interesting points with us today. If you've had a look at the agenda, there's several different bullet points that Nick has mentioned, and we will be covering those. But Nick, what got you interested in this side of the world? Investing in businesses, growth, exit strategies, mergers. It's not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not. So it wasn't something. It was something that fell into my lap. It actually happened on LinkedIn of all places. So I was just a guy turned up on my timeline, and basically said what he did, and I basically eventually, after some I won't bore you with the details, interaction, I decided to do the course, and I thought, this is fantastic. I should have been doing this a long time ago. And the person in question, basically, he took me on my journey from being an entrepreneur to being an investor shareholder. And there is actually a major difference between the two. I've always been an entrepreneur all my life. I've done many types, as you've mentioned before, I've done many types of businesses. But actually, all the business I've ever done, be it financial services, be it property, be it commercial finance, whatever it is, it's just a product, right? It's just a product, and they're more or less all the same. They just have different variations to them.
So you've mentioned the difference between an investor shareholder and an entrepreneur, and I'd love to go into that because there are a lot of people that use, if you go on LinkedIn, I find it amazing what people put into their headlines and their titles. And the reality, the difference between the two is as you say, there's a big difference. But I find there are a lot of people on LinkedIn, as an example, that call themselves investors, but are far from. So could you give us a little bit of an insight of what your thoughts are on the differences of those two?
Okay, so I'll give you an example, not something that I'm actually big into myself, but let's take the difference. It's mainly about time horizons. So there's never, there's never a bad thing to do. It's always if it's the right time to do it. Okay, so if you're an entrepreneur and business owner, you're always thinking about the next day ahead, the next week ahead, maybe the next month ahead, or the next quarter ahead. You're looking at trying to grow your business. You're looking at trying to do different types of, you're just looking to try to grow your business. When you're an investor, the time horizon is completely different. So let's take property investment, your average property investment, right? So your average person, there's lots of people that are on LinkedIn who are property investors, and anybody can be a property investor. You don't have to have that many skill sets to be a property investor. And in essence, you'll normally buy a property, you'll take out a buy-to-let mortgage, and you will rent. You will then find a tenant, rent it out. You will then have the tenant's rent paying the mortgage, and then what generally happens over time is the valuation of the property goes up, and the rental from the property goes up. So, in the first couple of years, you may be in a scenario where you're actually having to find money because the rent doesn't cover the mortgage. Especially as in the scenario where we are now, there'll be a lot of property investors now who can find their mortgages and their finance costs have gone up, but their rent hasn't, and they may have to find the differential. And so generally, the first 2 to 3 years is a struggle. But after you've made that first 5-year period, generally you've built some equity in the value of the property and the asset, and the income coming in is more than your expenditure. And then you grow. And so the point being is with an investor has to take really a minimum 3-year, but a 5-year horizon, whereas an entrepreneur is literally just thinking about next week or the month, maybe 3 months ahead. And that's the difference. And that, so can you do a deal? Can you do a deal now or whatever? Same with the stock market, right? So, and the other, if you own stocks and shares at the moment, they're well down. Now, somebody that's not an investor would be panic selling and selling them. An investor that knows his way around the block would say, I bought these for a reason. Nothing's really changed. And the other major thing that, for an investor is you only make a loss if you sell, and you only make a profit if you sell. While you're actually in the trade or the transaction, you're not losing money and you're not making money. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that time differential is such a big one because you look at so would you call somebody who invests in businesses, especially startups? I would assume again it's the same thing. You're looking at that 3 to 5 year period of exiting or growing the business or whatever the next stage is that you want to take the business to.
Yeah, so I would say startups are a lot. So I don't invest in startups. I invest in entrepreneurs, in business and established business and help grow. If you like, I personally invest in what I call unsexy businesses. Could be a sheet metal working factory in Newcastle. Could be a recruitment company. So if you're doing startups, I would suggest your horizon is much longer. So in generation, if you look at startups, you take Facebook, you get one round of funding, then there's another round of funding, then there's another round of funding, and maybe 5 years later you're ready to IPO, right? And so the whole thing about startups is actually you're gearing your business to aim for an IPO, right? And then the investors get paid out as obviously if you look at the Facebook story, that's a very good way to look at how startups get funded and what's in it. And obviously the return in a startup, the return you're looking to make is far greater than you would do if you're buying a business. So in essence, if I buy an established business, the model is actually not dissimilar, it's just slightly different to the property investment we say. So the same principle, you buy a business, you pay the debt off, and once you pay the debt off, you have a debt-free business that is worth X amount of pounds. But normally all the hard work is again, just like property investment, is in the first 3 or 4 years. So,
I know there are lots of people watching this and thinking, okay, next year, what am I going to do next? There are people that have got, some surplus cash because they've made some money during the last couple of years. And then there's those people that are on the other end of that where, they're thinking, okay, I need to make a plan. I need to make a change so I can step up my game in 2023. And, where does one begin with that? Because I've got, quite a few bullet points that we're going to go through here. But before even that's, you get started with that, what is...
So everybody's different, right? So everybody has it's a bit like a bit like a person inviting the financial advisor to his house or asking him, should he for investment school planning or for a pension? Everybody has a different set of horizons. So, for example, what is your risk tolerance? What is your tax financial position? Do you currently hold any investments, and what is the tax position on those investments? So a lot of things, tax will be a major part of it. And what sort of risk tolerance do you have? What type of thing do you want? So would you be investing in business? Would you be like property? So generally speaking, people with low risk tolerance should be migrating to doing property investment, because it's a minimal risk. The asset of a property is likely to go down less, likely to appreciate less, but as I said, it really depends on the individual. And I would suggest, if I was discussing somebody on LinkedIn, talking to somebody on LinkedIn, and they were asking me these questions, I would have a list of questions to ask them along the lines I've just said, to actually sort of drill down to find out what type of investor they are, what their position is, and then maybe I could offer them some constructive advice about steering them in the direction that they may need to go.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with this question, because a lot of times people look at things very high level and they want to assume that they can be an investor in, whether it be property or stocks or various different business models, but it's not as straightforward as, oh well, I want to do X. It's a matter of, well, your makeup and the knowledge that you have, as well as the as you say, the risk tolerance, that massively impacts whether that's a good decision for you at this time.
I just lost your sound there for a minute, so I didn't catch the end of the bit for some reason.
Okay, I was just saying that based on that question, that what you just said now, the reason I asked the question is just to show people that you may have a interest or a liking to go down a certain route, but without that evaluation of finding out what's actually a fit for you as an individual, it's really important to kind of hone down into that detail to find out whether that is the best route for you to take. As you mentioned, risk tolerance as an example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. But it's life generally, right? It's life generally, right? So, if you go on a date with a girlfriend, there's certain questions you'll ask to find out if you're compatible, right? That's probably, if you decide to get married, it's probably the biggest investment you'll make, a biggest life investment you'll make. And the same, but you need to know if you're compatible, what's right, what's wrong. And in investing's not quite the same, because the other benefits of getting married and other drawbacks of getting married, but the same principle applies. What are you happy with? And are you an anxious person or are you a gung-ho person, right? So are you somebody that responds very badly to stress, or somebody that can deal with stress? So, for example, if you're somebody who gets worried at the certain thing, you should really be, maybe not even property. Maybe you need to be in bonds or gilts. But actually, in the current market we're in, that's not a good idea either. But generally speaking, whereas if you're quite happy to deal with everything, you may be somebody that invests in crypto because you like the wild swings that gives you, right? So that's what you really need to find out, is really, the type of person you are, what you want to do. And then, the number one thing after that is to educate yourself, right? So you can have a mentor, you can have somebody that's helping you, guiding you in the process, maybe a good sounding board for you. You can have people that you follow and listen to what they have to say. I'll give you an example. Two people that I follow, one person called Harry Dent and another guy called Raoul Pye, who are in the investment market, mainly in the stock and bonds markets. Now, they both have polar views. One thinks that we've reached the bottom of the market, and one thinks that the stock market's going to fall 80%. Okay, so extreme difference. So if you followed one or the other, if you followed both of them, you'd be you were relying on them, you'd be in a bit of a strip. So you have to take the data from all these people, or the people that you might want to listen to, and you have to form your own judgment. But sometimes you may need a sounding board to help you come to that judgment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I did a poll recently about how many people actually have mentors. and I was frightened to see how many business owners are, that voted, I'm doing this solo and figuring it out as I go, as opposed to, having that sounding board. And I found, even as a coach and as somebody who trains people on a regular basis, that it's vital for me to keep myself updated. And it can be a very lonely world out there if you haven't got the right people to lean on.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we're all at different points of the scale, right?
Yeah.
We're all at different points. We've all learned in life, and some, and if you're an entrepreneur, but you've been in the same business for 20 years, it's very sometimes more difficult to get to that, get to where you want to go. So I was chatting actually to somebody within our group yesterday, and they have a mentor, and explaining the benefits that they got from, he meets up with his mentor once every couple of weeks, and he finds that really, really, really helpful. So if it works, then do that. There's one part of my business that I'm a consultant and an investor in some way. So I actually help people grow their businesses, and in that capacity, that's where that's where I help. But at the end of the day, it's their business; they have to run their business. So again, I always say to people, by all means, listen to what I have to say, but it's your judgment. If your business is ultra successful, I'm not going to take the glory, and if it goes bankrupt, it's not my fault.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is, as you say, it's the choices you make. You've got to be able to make sure that you are able to cope with the environment that comes along with it. So, as an example, if it's a high risk, you're going to know that it's going to be stressful, and there's going to be a lot of things that you need to be aware of. Whereas if it's a low risk, then you potentially can breathe a little bit more. I see Simon's made a statement over here: with all markets, there's a critical history. And he's saying, I was in the property market in the UK's last major negative equity crisis happened in the early 90s. Are all the indicators that we're heading for a similar housing crash imminently?
Right. So So I jump in there. I think there are going to be certain areas that are going to crash. Is my personal view. I think there's going to be some sweet spots like London and Manchester that will go down, but not go down as much. I mean, obviously, I don't want to get into a political conversation about what this current government's done since Friday. That's another conversation for everything else. But there is going to be whatever. But one of the side products, which I was discussing with somebody yesterday, is one of my businesses is a real estate business, and we basically sell UK property, mainly in London and Manchester, to Hong Kong, Singaporean, and Chinese investors. Now they're currently 30% better off. So if they bought a buy-to-let property in Manchester or London, the housing market has to drop 30% because they're worse off because they basically are buying everything in dollars. So they've got a 30% drop. So there are other things in play and that's the other thing at the moment. And most of these big developers that are in Manchester and London, they have offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, Thailand. And actually 80% of their sales are not done in the UK. They're done outside of the UK. Wow, so it'll be very interesting to see those developers, what actually, how that transpires. But in answer to Simon's question, I agree with him. I do think there will be some form of recession, but I think it will differ to the type of property it is. So I think the people that have bought buy-to-lets Airbnb style, so in Somerset, Devon, places like that, are going to have it much worse than somebody that's bought a one-bedroom buy-to-let property in Manchester city centre, as an example. But we could have another call or another interview about the state of the housing market and get lots of different people, property people in here, and everybody would have different views. But
absolutely, I think in essence,
I do share some of Simon's concerns.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an appetite for conversations around that. So I might be ringing that bell and saying, "Hey, Nick, next conversation." Um, so I want to get into some of these bullet points that I know a lot of people have, specifically wanted to come and join to find out more about. So I wanted to get into that, Nick, and then at the end, I'd love to give people an opportunity just to find out how they can connect with you, how they can reach out. Because I know you've got a wealth of experience that a lot of people would love to, tap into. And I know you don't work with everybody out in the world, but I'm sure there are a few people that may have interesting projects or things that they have questions about that you can definitely add massive value to. So at the end, we'll, if you could just let us know how people should best get hold of you, because we don't want your phone ringing off the hook.
Okay, sure, no problem.
It's a good problem to have, but on the other end, I know you like your quiet time as well. So let's go into the first one. So the first one is quite a bold statement. It's how to pay 0% tax when selling your business. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people at this stage contemplating whether they should sell their business because of various reasons. So how do they even go about looking at doing that?
Okay, so everything I do is about tax. So how you buy an asset is more important than what you pay for the asset. Okay. And when you sell an asset, how you sell an asset and the tax structure of selling the asset is more important than the actual price you get for it. So there are various different. So in essence, let's take example, if you're selling a business, there's 4 taxes that compute into selling a business. You have a thing called BADR, which is known as entrepreneurs relief, which is at 10%. You have capital gains tax, which is at 20%. You have corporation tax, and you have personal income tax. As I'm talking, you've disappeared off my screen, so hopefully you can hear this. And then as I said, thereafter, you want to, when you sell a business or buy a business, you want to utilize those tax rates and how the HMRC deal with that in the most coherent structure possible. Now, one of the ways that you can obviously benefit from a low tax regime or 0% tax regime is to move to a tax status or a tax regime that has a much lower tax than the UK. Now, the problem with that is it all depends what stage you are at your life and whether you're prepared to spend, less than 180 days a year in the United Kingdom. If you're not, then you're stuck in the United Kingdom. You have to make the best deal using all the tax rates at your disposal. A good friend of mine has recently moved to Gibraltar, and he's basically paying 0% capital gains tax on his sales, but his situation allows him to do that. So it's about a lifestyle choice, many other things. But again, it comes back to the conversation we were saying earlier, in that everybody's different. Everybody's outlook in life is different. Everybody's needs are different. So generally, kids kill you every time. So if you have kids, wherever you have kids, you're going to have to pay tax in that jurisdiction because they're going to go to school in that jurisdiction for more than 180 days a year. So I hope that answers that question. Now, my question to you now
is where the heck have you gone?
No, if you are there, so you can hear me, right? So hopefully
I have. We had a bit of a power failure over here, and everything just went black, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Okay, so I can see your name, but not your pretty face anymore. So
yeah, the camera will reboot in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. So there's lots of things to take into consideration because it's not just a matter of making this decision and thinking that tomorrow will be different. You've got to really think about the impact 1, 2, 3, 5 years ahead as well when selling your business.
Yes, I mean, so for example, If you one example is you may have kids at university or school now, but you're planning to sell your business in 2 or 3 years' time. In 2 or 3 years' time, you could move to Portugal and put everything in a tax treatment that would be advantageous to you at that time. If you're selling your business tomorrow and the kids still at school in the UK and you have to stay in the UK, you can still structure the deal tax effectively, but you just have to know what the situation is, what is the plan. Obviously, the younger you are and the longer plan horizon you have, the easier it is to make those better plans, shall we say. Whereas if you're going to sell your business in the next month, then you just have to make the best as you can. Okay, so I guess you've disappeared again, yeah?
There we go. It's finally restarted.
Okay, cool.
What a pain. Anyway, technical issues, we've got to roll on with these things. So the next question then is, how do you grow your business without spending new market dollars? I mean, is that possible?
Yes, it's very it's actually relatively easy. There's two ways. There's two ways. There's the most obvious thing that all entrepreneurs know is adding value. Okay, so I used to own a real estate company called Spanish Hot Properties in Marbella, and we would actually in the last year of business, before I moved to the Philippines, we wrote 25% of that year's business from clients who had registered on our website 5 years previously.
Oh wow!
So one of the biggest things, and it's that people neglect, is actually their existing clients, their existing client bank, and actually keeping in contact. And the thing is, what actually happened with those clients, because they registered in 2000, this was about 2014, because they registered in 2010, they began to get emails from us 3 times a week for 4 years. So the trust and everything is built up over that time, and they feel that, whereas if somebody gets an email from today, they have a much bigger trust issue because they've never dealt with you before. So that's obviously, in simple terms, that's a simple way that you can add value. You can do referral programs. There's many ways which I won't go into, because again there's a long conversation. And the other way that you can do things, which entrepreneurs don't think so much, is actually how you can take something away. Okay, so you can actually analyze your business about your expenditure and everything else, and actually say, do I really need to do that, right? And it might only be £50 a month, right? But if you do this really properly, you might suddenly find £500 a month. And the great thing about something you take away, it doesn't cost you anything to create it, right? Yeah. It just goes straight to the bottom line. And you review, and there's also other things that you might get on the taking away subject is if you know how to do this, is a research and development credit from HMRC. Yeah. Now, and there's special companies they'll charge you between 10 to 20% of what they receive, but they will actually work on a no-win, no-fee basis, so it doesn't actually cost you any money. And that can be quite advantageous. I've done that with some of the businesses I own. Those businesses have benefited from our R&D credits, and there are other tools. We also own a domiciliary care, a home care business, and we were able to do some very interesting things with VAT. So basically, home care businesses are not VAT registered, but we actually, through a certain set of accountants, were able to claim the VAT that we spent back. But that's a long conversation for another day. But those are sort of examples of basically how it's almost much easier and much more creative to take something away than it is to add something. But in my example, I've given you a bit of both.
So, I mean, this is really important to realize, because a lot of times business owners, as you say, they're thinking short term. They're thinking about tomorrow, maybe next week, at most next month. And because of that, they're not seeing the opportunities and the help that's available around them. So things like, potential grants, or looking at their accounts to see, what are you wasting money on, or even looking at existing clients and going back to that. And, I see that on LinkedIn all the time with people that are, massively going for the numbers. They're trying to get new people all the time, but they forget to engage with their existing network. And they don't, reignite and keep those conversations going. And like you said, with that email process that you put together, you've already been building that trust over time. So it's the same with whether it be LinkedIn or anything else. Why not dip into your existing resources that don't cost you extra dollars? So I can see that your mind tends to the lights go on when you start going into all the different solutions. So I can bet that a lot of people can benefit from just having a conversation about where they're at with their business with you, to have a look at the potential growth opportunities, the potential exit opportunities, and various others, because you've got that history and that experience already. And that's the challenge. I think most business owners don't get an opportunity to take time out to work on their business as opposed to in their business. What would you say for business owners that are, like the swan, where they, are all gracious above the water, but pedaling like hell underwater? What advice would you give them?
Get somebody to do the paddling for you, right? Delegation it's something I learned a long time. In the peak of Spanish hot properties, I was the best managing director. I was the best telesales director. I was the best salesman. I was the best tea maker. I was, you name it. I was the best at everything. But you have to accept that if you're going to get some help, that whoever you get to help, especially if you're egotistical, they'll never be as good as you. But if they're within a certain level of you, and you have to trust them, and they may make some mistakes. I could use another word, but I won't. They may make mistakes. They may not be as good as you think you are, but they will help you grow your business. And you have to be able to delegate. And I see that so many times with entrepreneurs that they just can't, they can't delegate, and then they swear and shout when somebody doesn't do whatever they do. I'm the first person to get upset, but I'm a great believer. I love Simon's mark, outsource your paddling. Couldn't put it better myself, right? Brilliant, absolutely. And I'll stop there because I think he summed it up perfectly.
Absolutely brilliant. So the next one is, why don't more SMEs consider merging? Because I've seen quite a trend around this, and it seems like a no-brainer in some sense, but why don't more consider it?
It's a very good question. So basically, in mathematics, 2 + 2 is 4. In mergers and acquisitions, 2 + 2 could be 5. And I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine, he had an IT company specializing in Microsoft, and he decided that he would like to grow his business by acquisition or by merging. He found another business that was specialized in Apple, basically in the iCloud Apple side. So it was a perfect merge, right? So they agreed to merge their businesses, and then suddenly the valuation. So they were, hypothetically, they were making $100,000 a year each. That's for example. So the new company's worth $200,000. So at a multiple as 3, it's now worth $600,000. But actually, $200,000, the way the markets work, is actually probably has an extra half a multiple. So it's actually valued more. They'll also have savings in costs, so the net profit goes up. And in this particular case, 2 + 2 actually made 5. And then the only problem you have is actually who's going, and that's the big problem, was who's going to run the company. Normally you get two egos crashing, so you have to find somebody that's happy to take the money and take a second fiddle. So my colleague, he said he let the other guy become the managing director of the organization. And there's a very advantageous thing that he did that for, because when you come to sell the business, it's likely the person running the company is going to have to stay longer with the business than the person that doesn't have to stay with it. But that's another conversation for another day. You know, so yeah.
I'd say each one of these bullet points could be
so answer your question, I think is to answer your question, why do people merge? It's mainly about ego or who's going to run the business, right? And giving up control, right? You know, and you obviously, when you do the fit, you have to make sure it's somebody you feel you can work with, right? Or are you a person that can, you know, and it almost comes back to the delegation conversation we just had in the previous question.
So, you know, I think each one of these bullet points could be an interview on its own, because there's so much detail to go into.
Definitely, yeah, probably,
and so many opportunities. But I love the fact that we're just touching on each of these just to give people a bit of a flavor of what is possible out in the marketplace, especially, or what things to consider for next year, as an example, even now. So, you know, one that I get asked quite often, and you know, a lot of business owners think about this, but then it's finding somebody who can really help them with the best way to do it, because a lot of people are worried about exiting their business because, again, it's that power thing. Who's going to look after it? What will happen to it? What will happen to the staff? All those kind of things. So how do you prepare for yourself for a business exit? Like, what are the things that people should consider?
Okay, that's so many questions in one. But the main thing is actually, whenever you buy a business, obviously if you build it from scratch, it's different. You should be thinking about how you want to exit. But you should have an exit plan. I always say to people, if you're able to think about 2 years in advance, then you should be planning. So if your plan is to get out of the business 2 years' time, you should be thinking about that today and making plans. Now, the problem with businesses is that only 1% of businesses ever get sold, and only 20% of businesses that are put up for sale ever get sold. Wow. So you have a big competition thing. So you need to do things. You need to package your business up in certain ways. You need to look at who you're competing against, whatever, and how your business becomes attractive. So you need to, one of the things would be a data room. So you have all the data, everything packaged up correctly, so that when it goes to the lawyers and due diligence, it's straightforward, et cetera, price, and how you're prepared, and how you're prepared to exit the business. So when everybody puts up a business for sale, they normally say, I want 100% cash, and I want it on day one, and then end up selling 5 years down the road, maybe getting 40% cash and the rest in other ways. It obviously depends in the sector. So if you're in telecommunications or in healthcare, you're more likely to get closer to 100% than you are in a sector where it's quite hard to sell your business, right? So, you know, that's, but yeah, so in essence, to answer the question, you should be thinking 2 years in advance, you should be planning, and you should make your business as easy to sell as possible. Yeah, I think that's a short answer.
That's frightening. Less than 1% of businesses get sold? Yes,
that's 1% of total businesses, right? So, but actually, more importantly, only 20% of businesses are actually listed for sale actually get sold. So you'll basically have a 1 in 5 chance, and clearly some sectors are more than that, and some sectors are less than that. If you're less than that, it might be 1 in 10, right? So yeah.
So, you know, with such small percentages, it could be an interesting place for people to potentially invest in as well, because of the fact that there's more or less competition, should we say. It's such a small pool of people trying to sell. But why do you think it's not a bigger percentage? Because you'd think more people would want to exit their business at some stage.
Right. We need 3 shows. I'll answer the question in 2 words: baby boomers. Okay. And we're now coming to the end of the baby boomers, right? We're now coming to the end of the cycle. But basically, everyone after the Second World War, everyone was loving everybody and making lots of kids. And that cycle has now changed. Now we're making less kids, right? So in the future, it won't be a thing. So there's just too many. There's basically too many people. They all bake the business. The whole, and again, that's another conversation for another. The whole economic meltdown we have is because the population's too much. Right, there's a whole load of demographics and dynamics about that, but in short, that is the reason. There's too many businesses for sale. Right, that's the bottom line. And the problem is, most of these people are trying to sell their businesses, and there's the sectors that I'm in, is they have what I call unsexy businesses. So their kids want to make the next Facebook app or the next the next Twitter app. And they have maybe an industrial manufacturing business in Manchester or in Yorkshire. They're not in, and they would like their son ideally to take the business. You got to be joking, Dad. I'm not being stuck in this factory. You have no chance. I'm out of here. So people don't want to do that anymore. But these businesses are a lifeblood of the local community. These entrepreneurs are So, and just going back to bring that point is most people that are selling these businesses, when they come to sell the business, believe it or not, money is not their overriding factor. It actually is. They're actually concerned about the people they're leaving behind. They're concerned about their staff. They're concerned about the community. They don't want to go in the pub and say, "Oh, you sold that to that right idiot Nick, and he's made us all redundant. What sort of person are you?" Right? Et cetera, et cetera. That's probably more important to them than an extra 100,000 on the price. Right?
Yeah, it's that post-sale impact on the whole environment around them is huge. Sure. Exactly. So leading into the next one, then why can people not sell their business? Like what's the thing stopping them?
The biggest one, and I won't dwell too long on this, is business brokers. Now they should be struck down at birth before they've done. There are exceptions to the rule, but 98% of them are useless. They actually try and destroy deals. So I consider myself as a real estate guy. I'm a broker. I'm actually a broker in my life. I try and bring buyers and sellers together. I made my whole life when I struck deals to buy and sell business. I always try to make it good for the buyer and the seller. That's my whole. But these people, these business brokers, look for ways to kill deals. It's absolutely, and it's normally about how the deal's structured, right? So, for example, if one of my companies wants to go in and buy your business, and I'd say, but I basically go and get an institution to 100% finance the purchase. Do you care? No, you don't. But the business broker says, "Oh, you're not putting any money into the deal, so therefore he shouldn't be doing it," right? It's what's right for the seller, right? And generally speaking, with the exception of a very few deals, all deals will involve some degree of vendor finance. Okay, so generally speaking, most of the deals that we do in, say, home care, generally we're paying 50% upfront, and we're deferring 50%. We come to an agreement with the vendor to defer the other 50%. That's generally the sort of deals we're doing. That's just one sector as an example. So, and what happens is the reason they've had it drummed in, if he doesn't give you 100% cash from day one, let's move on to the next person. The problem is you might be waiting 5 years for the next person, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that same thing.
Are these business brokers going to financially recompense you for the financial loss? The financial loss, that you may have suffered because of it, right?
Sure, so many pitfalls and things to think about. And then, so this one's an interesting one. How do you buy an asset is more important than the price you pay for it? Now, you lent into this slightly earlier, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so basically, I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? First will be a real estate example. If I have a client in Hong Kong who wants to buy a buy-to-let property in Manchester, he should always buy that for a private limited company, SPV company. In the UK, primarily because corporation tax is much less than personal taxation, okay? And for the structure, and because he's an overseas resident and how you structure it tax-wise, it's more tax advantageous. If that same client wanted to buy a lifestyle property in Marbella, I would always advise him to buy it in his own name because of the cost of putting it in a company, the taxation of the company would not be as advantageous as it would be if it was in his own name, okay? When you get into higher values, then the scenario will change. So what I'm saying is with each investment, you have to look at the position. When you come to buy and sell a business, exactly that. So I think I touched on it before. One of the businesses we purchased, the person ended up in a part of the purchase, 100,000 purchase. We arranged it that they only paid 10,000 tax. If they'd followed their accountant's advice, they would have paid 46,000 tax on that particular part of it. And that's all. That's all to do with the tax structure. So everything that I do is really tax first. It's the fundamental thing in if I'm acting as an agent, as in the real estate business, or I'm buying a business or advising somebody to sell a business. It's about putting those structures in place. And obviously, back to the old question, how you sell a business, you need to put those structures in place before you actually complete the sale of the business.
Sure, I can think of about 100 other topics just off the back of what we've discussed so far to ask you about that will impact your businesses in some ways. But conscious of time, and we've got 2 points left that I'd like to cover, and then we'll wrap up. But the last one is the point of financial engineering. Now that how financial engineering can help your business become more profitable. Expand on that for us, and I know.
Okay, so there's so I sort of touched it in one of my previous answers when you're looking to take something away. So financial engineering is a whole range. You look at the company, you look at as R&D credits, whether it's also you can do something simple, a free gift to everybody. You could just pay everybody 14 days later, and you can see if you do your cash flow forecast, you can suddenly see that you no longer have a cash flow problem. So one of the biggest problems we have in some of our businesses is as we actually take on more customers, our cash flow position, our profit goes higher, but our cash flow position gets worse. Okay, so there's two ways to fix that. One is through invoice discounting, and the other is to move your payees and whatever. That's one set. There are also a lot of other very tax efficient ways that you can restructure how you pay your employees and tax. Now that works in certain things. Now, some of these ideas will not necessarily add to the bottom line that much, but they may help you with recruitment and retention, right? So, for example, making everybody. So if you would go to the John Lewis partnership style of doing something, and you make all your employees partners, that is can be very advantageous in how they feel about working for the business. Okay, it doesn't necessarily they get benefits. There's some businesses have done this, and they've actually, through the tax savings that they made, they were able to give all their staff company cars and things like this. So this is just a range of different things you can do, and what that really comes from is one of the service I offer is we call it a WIBO, which is work in buyout. So a company invites me in to help them expand and grow their business and review. So through financial engineering and through adding value to the growth, we will grow the business. So let's say, for example, I don't ask for any money. I take equity in the company. So let's say, for a hypothetical sake, I take 25% of the company. And I have a set of goals, and I say I'll do this, achieve this. If I don't achieve this, I'll return the shares. And then I start to implement all of this. And then normally with those owners, we'll have an 18-month, 2-year plan to achieve what we want to achieve. And at that end of that period, we'll have an exit plan. Either they then suddenly like what I've done, and out of the extra profit I've created for the company, they will buy those shares back off me. They could actually decide to put the business for sale. We both sell the business, and we both exit. Or in a crazy scenario, could be they don't want to run the business anymore, and I end up buying the business. But that's, in that particular case, that's where the financial engineering comes in, from where I'm actually helping businesses on a growth plan. So when I do a growth plan, I'm looking at financial engineering to cut costs, and then looking at things we can do to add value. Okay. And what's really interesting is all the people that we've talked to about financial engineering, most entrepreneurs aren't interested in that. But when you say, "Oh, I can add an extra 10 grand profit by adding this business," oh yeah, that's really interesting. They get really, really excited about that, but they don't get excited where you've saved them 100 grand. They're not excited by that. But the 10 grand that you save them at the top end, because they're entrepreneurs by nature, right? So accountancy, as we know from Monty Python, is boring, right? People jump out of tower blocks and stuff like that.
Oh dear. But it sheds a lot of light on the fact that business is not straightforward, and it gives you an understanding of why so many businesses fail in the first 3 to 5 years, because they don't think about all these other things. And more often than not, I've seen so many emotional based startups where somebody has exited their current position because they didn't like the boss, or they didn't like a certain decision, or they didn't get given certain controls, or whatever the impact was, and then they decide, okay, I'm going to start a business. But all these things we discussed today, haven't even dawned on them, because they've never run their own business. So these things don't cross their minds, and this is why it's so important to have somebody like yourself, or a mentor that has some background in all these different strategies, because it could be the life and death of your business if you don't structure it properly.
Yeah, so there's hundreds of people like me around. Okay, I think I'm the best because I've got an ego, right? But there's hundreds of people that people go. And what I would say to people is, I have a philosophy in life: is I only do business with people I like, and people should only do business with the people they like, and that's all about making a connection. And as I said, I could probably you go through my LinkedIn profile, you can probably find 10 or 12 people I'm connected with who do something, or who offer a similar service to me. So if you watch this show tonight and you don't like me, then just go through that and you'll find somebody that you do like, right?
It is such an important thing, and this is where just like you say, it's you've got to be comfortable with that person that you're working with, is so important. And one of the things I have to mention, if anybody who isn't already following Nick, do us a favor, just go and read some of his posts or listen to some of the little videos that he's done. The amount of value that he squeezes into such short paragraphs or little videos is absolutely mind-blowing. And if you've got a business of any type, I would urge you to go and follow Nick. Go and comment on his posts. He'll respond. He is a real human being, and you'll guaranteed learn something that's going to make an impact on your business. So Nick, with that, the last point we have, and this is one that I'm sure a lot of people have been thinking about, the news has been talking about it a lot, is whether there is or isn't a recession. And the last point is how to protect your business in the forthcoming recession. What kind of golden nuggets have you got for people to take away and think about when considering this?
Right, so everybody's different. So I think a recession is more likely since the lunatics took over on Friday. So I think it's much more likely than it was a week ago. Hopefully it's a minimal recession. Actually, the funny thing is they're actually trying to avoid a recession, but the actions they're taking make a recession more likely. So the question is really as making your balance sheet of the business as strong as you can. Make sure, so prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Okay. So you should take a review of your business, and look at that. As I said, there's 100 people like me or similar people. If you don't have the expertise in house, have somebody come and have a look and say, what actions can we take to prepare ourselves in case this happens. And then obviously the other thing I would suggest, if that involves that needing finance, now would be the time to put that, even if you don't need the finance till January, February, put the finance in place because the banks won't be lending in January and February. Okay. So at the moment, there's still some risk appetite from the banks, right? And obviously, again, it's something that we can help with and the advisors can help with. But the recovery loan scheme for existing businesses is also a great tool. And as I said, if your business is actually going to need finance to get through a recession, you don't have. I mean, obviously, you don't have to. You can always pay the loan back and not use it. But if you do a review and see that you need it, best to action it now while the banks are still lending. But as I said, the main thing would be to get someone like myself to come and review the business if you don't. But some businesses will have the expertise in house anyway. They don't need somebody like me. But it's better to be safe than sorry. As I said, I'm a great believer in prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I'm doing that with my own stock and crypto portfolio. Trying to manage the possible flows either way. It's the best advice I can give. Same for people in property. But the property is pretty much fixed, right? The only thing that you can do in property is if you think rates are going to be long term for a long term, is do a fixed rate. But I think the only problem with that now is that seems to be less likely because as you probably saw, all the lenders yesterday pulled all their fixed rate products. So that may not be that practical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that's as I said, that we could have another conversation about the recession. Hopefully, I mean, everybody's hoping for a soft landing. I think there will be a recession. My only thing is I don't know how big or deep it's going to be. And just to reiterate, the most important point is the lunatics want to avoid a recession, but their actions are actually likely to make it happen more. I.e., the rise in interest rates will be worse than the tax cut, the growth that the tax cuts bring in. But that's another. The thing about I also add a final point on this, a life story is always a worry about the things that you can affect or control. So I cannot control what Liz Truss and Kwasi do. That's their choice. Nothing I can do about that. Maybe there's a few Conservative MPs can vote them out of power, but there's nothing I personally can do. So I can't worry about what they. Can't worry about what they do. All you can do is deal and prepare for what might happen because of what they've done.
And this is as you alluded to there is work on the things that are within your control. Business is it's a funny thing. It's an exciting thing. It can be very frustrating. And more often than not ends up being frustrating at some point, but that's part of the learning curve and the journey. But when you've got some of these incredible pieces of knowledge that you've shared, Nick, when you spoke about the fact that only 1% of businesses ever go on sale, is a clear picture that if more people knew what you knew, more people would be able to, have that successful outcome, as opposed to what most businesses do, where business owners just, head in the sand and hope for the best and, see where it goes. These are, proven strategies that you work with that each will impact a business, differently depending on where you're at. So, if you're listening to this or watching, I would 100%, recommend just to reach out to Nick, start a conversation, or somebody like Nick. The bottom line is, if you avoid the tough conversations, the reality is you have less control over your business. So Nick has brought several interesting points and food for thought in, and I can guarantee every single business owner that has been watching or watches this in the future will think of or take one of those points on board and realize they haven't thought about that aspect of their business. So Nick, I'm definitely going to look forward to some more conversations around this with you, and maybe dive deeper into a few specifics. But I really do think this has been a very valuable session. My mind is going all over the place now, thinking about not only things for myself, but for some of my clients that could majorly benefit from these different strategies. So Nick, what is the best way for people to get hold of you, to reach out to you, and what should they not reach out to you for? As an example.
So there's nothing they shouldn't reach out to me for, right? So I'm always happy to help people. I mean, I have I don't know how many conversations each year with various people. I'd like to think that anybody I have a conversation with takes one thing from the meeting that they didn't think about before. So if that's all you take, but I would say any business owner would have some benefit of having a conversation with me, even if they don't need it. So everything about life is timing, right? So we might have a conversation together, and it's now not the right time. I'm currently negotiating to buy a business, and we had our first meeting on Zoom 2 years ago.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So it just, you never know. And obviously the difference with me is I wear two hats, if you like. I'm looking to buy businesses, but then I'm also there to help other businesses. So half my business is consultancy and half of my business is acquisition, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And they fit into different things. So I would say, I mean, look, it doesn't do for all of you old people, as Busby used to say, it's good to talk, right? And obviously, I apologize for all the young people who probably don't even know who Busby is. But there you go.
Excellent.
So you want to know how to connect with me? So basically, Nicholas LinkedIn / Nicholas-J-Stuart Stuart on LinkedIn. WhatsApp mobile is +351 968 850 089. I would suggest WhatsApp me first. Not that I don't want to take calls, but I generally reject calls that I don't know. I don't know who they are. But I'm happy to share the number. Also, you can connect to me on Twitter as Nick Stuart. However, hang on one second. I have one of those stupid Twitter addresses, so I'm just going to tell you what it is as I log in.
Thank you, Simon, for sharing his LinkedIn profile there.
Okay, and it's it's Nick NICK STU 896. Actually, why don't I put it in the chat? It'll be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll need to.
Where is the? I got to find the chat. It's at the bottom.
Should be on the right-hand side. If not, I'll be able to put it in. I've got you here. There we go.
You got it. Yeah,
so you've got one of those.
Self-generated numbers, yeah.
So we need to get you to update that and introduce you to the tweeting goddess. But I'll do that at some stage as well. Awesome stuff. And we've just had a few comments from Simon. Ryan Wilkie has also said, lovely interview, thank you. And he's a young property aspiring property investor as well. So lots of things for
so I would say with property investors, I not necessarily can help them acquire property, but I can maybe steer them on the straight and narrow and give some basic tips. And I don't have to make money out of everything I do, right? So I'm quite happy to help people along the way.
Well, this is the thing is it's all about how many people you can help along the way that makes a big impact, and it leaves that legacy as well. So it's been incredibly educational to learn all the different aspects that you look at, Nick, and the fact that Nick is a typical. You can see he's got a high risk tolerance because even when my lights went out, Nick just sailed on, carried on with the conversation in the beginning, didn't even worry that I disappeared, and soldiered on. So it shows you it takes a very special personality to be able to cope when things fall apart around you. Nick is definitely somebody to lean on, and he didn't even flinch. It was quite amazing because when I came back on, you were just still right in your stride there, Nick. I was very impressed.
I'm glad I was able to hold the fort for the seconds while you rebooted.
While I was rebooted myself, I didn't even have a control over that. The PC just went no. Anyway, I thank you very much for the time and the amount of information you've put in here. And if anybody's watching this and you want us to dive deeper into any specific subjects, please put that in the comments. I know you'll be able to watch the replay of this. Any questions that you may have, drop it in here as well. I'm sure Nick and I will be able to get back to you on whether that's on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook as well. But Nick, thank you so much for spending this was supposed to be half an hour to 40 minutes, a whole hour, just on going into detail on each one of those points. And I think there's a lot of thinking for a lot of us to do moving forward as to how we tackle this year ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mac, for the interview. I've really enjoyed it. It's nice that I get I even got excited at times, which is a good thing. So when you're doing all the short things, right? So it's nice to let people know that there's something that gets you up. There has to be a reason to do things and get you up in the morning, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And it's life's so much more worth living when you've got a reason to get up in the morning, as opposed to not work again.
Yeah, that's another comment. I mean, some of the greatest things in life are people that it's quite interesting. I had a few people I considered to be my protege, and they were quite happy to be my mentor. But when they made it, I was no longer their mentor anymore. They achieved it all without me.
It's that.
Yes.
Like the Karate Kid thing. The student becomes the teacher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, then you've done a good job, Nick.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, listen, Nick, massive appreciation. Thank you so much, and for all of those watching, please go and connect and follow Nick.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for everybody for watching, and love to talk to you sometime. And thank you very much, Mac.
Only a pleasure, Nick, and I'm sure we're going to have loads more of these. All the best.
Okay, I'll wait for you to turn me off.
All the best. There we go.
Okay.
1 second. Let's do this little technical bit over here.